I'm here with Gabriele Kuby. She's a Catholic author and international speaker. As a studied sociologist, she observes the developments in our society, and Pope Benedict XVI once called her a brave warrior against ideologies that ultimately result in the destruction of man. Gabriele Kuby, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Your most successful book is called The Global Sexual Revolution. It has been translated into about 15 languages. And you argue in that book that the sexual revolution, it claims to give people freedom, sexual liberation, freedom, etc. But it actually destroyed freedom, you say. And how so? How did it destroy freedom? What would you say to that?
The subtitle of the book is Destruction of Freedom in the Name of Freedom. And it's all sold to us. There's more freedom, more freedom. We have no rules, we have no boundaries in any way. We can destroy all boundaries, and then we are free. And this is a very strange concept of freedom. It is the freedom of, let's say, a small child, 3-year-old child. It thinks it can do anything it wishes, and parents have to teach a child about reality. The stove is hot. If you put your hand on it, it will burn you. And there are other people. It's not only you. And this we have to learn gradually and deeper and deeper and deeper through our life, that there are limits to freedom. We come into this life, we have not chosen in which culture we are born, in which age we are born, in which family we are born, in which body we are born. We have not chosen it, or which language is our mother tongue, as we say, we learn our language from our mother. So there is in this earth, there is no absolute freedom, and it's a childish and irresponsible idea that freedom could be limitless. We have to accept these conditions, and we have to make good out of these conditions. We have to accept that we are in a certain culture and are rooted in that culture, that we are in a certain family, and it is a great tragedy for every human being if the roots we have, which tell us who we are, to which family we belong, what ancestors we have, in which culture we are, what is the history of our culture. Those are our roots and our religion. And all this used to tell us who we are and made it easier because it is a complete too much challenge, too much demand on a person if we have to invent ourselves. We can't do that. And the sexual revolution tells us, fulfill your sexual desires in any way you like, and it will make you free and happy. The opposite is true. The sexual drive is very strong. After eating, which keeps us alive, the sexual drive is probably the second strongest drive because it keeps life alive. It keeps the human race alive. So this is given by God. We are born in two sexes. We are attracted to each other, and this attraction, if it comes together, gives life. That is very strong. And if we do not respect the limits, this sexual drive will dominate us. So we have to learn to harness it. We have to learn how will the sexual drive be united with the longing of our heart for love. And if we say the sexual drive is just for satisfying lust and give it however you want to do this, it will have domination over us. And this is what we see. We see masses and masses of people addicted to pornography and addicted to their sexual drive. And the cost is the longing of their heart will not be fulfilled.
Yeah, one I want to ask you about abortion because it is connected to the sexual revolution, and at the same time, sometimes you hear the argument, or often, if you ask, someone from the left, how they want to reduce abortion, then it's like, oh, we need more, sexual education, or their idea of sexual education, and then we'll have fewer abortions, and then people will get along. But in fact, ever since the sexual revolution of the 60s, and the abortion rates have gone up everywhere, and at least all over the West. And can you explain, how does the sexual revolution, how does this so-called sexual liberation go together with abortion? How does it lead to this extreme increase in abortion?
The great promise of contraception was it would reduce abortions. The pill, which is not at all a medicine and doesn't do any good. On the contrary, it seriously harms the female body, and possibly much further harm even to the men's fertility by having all these estrogens in the water and so on and so on. But it seriously harms the woman. How could it not harm the woman? Because it completely upsets our very, very intricate hormonal system. So the big promise was it would reduce abortion. And when we see the statistics, it is not true. On the contrary, the abortions go up. Why is that? Because all our sophisticated methods of contraception are not safe. Nature is stronger. What is even deeper is it changes our attitude to the child. It says, it is my will. I decide over life and death. I decide, do I want a child? And if I can't have a child, I will do all sorts of things of artificial reproduction to have a child at all costs. And if I have a child I don't want, I kill it. So it completely overturns the attitude to the child. The child is a gift from the Lord. It's a gift all through the Old Testament, through the whole Bible. Life is a gift. We have not made life. Life is a gift from God. And a child is a gift from God. And we destroy this attitude that a child is a gift. We say, it's a product of mine. And of course I can control the product. And I can't, because nature is stronger. But then I just say, okay, if it doesn't fit into my life plan, if I already have 3 children, I can't bear with the 4th one, I just kill it. And we heard today the testimony of Katie Altman, and did abortions herself, and she gave us this very, very, very moving testimony, how she step by steps realized what she was doing. Mm-hmm. She realized all of a sudden the Holocaust, killing millions of people, and we are killing 73 million babies before they are born, human beings, every year. Those are the newest numbers of the World Health Organization, or whatever it is this huge numbers that certainly came together for her. And if we become slaves of the sexual drive and cannot control it, and cannot completely control fertility, and have this idea, I decide over life and death, then abortion rises.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How could you maybe talk a bit about the ideological roots of the sexual revolution, especially people, like I said before, people mentioned the 60s because that was like the big push for the sexual revolution, but it started much earlier. You mentioned in your book that the connection to the French Revolution, first of all, that was already over 200 years ago, and also to to Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels and the communism and Marxism. Could you talk a bit about how they, viewed the sexual revolution and what their plans were, and how is that connected to what we see today?
Yes. You can go back and back and back because there are always roots which are deeper than what you look at. I started in my book with the French Revolution because they put actually the whore on the altar. They said do away with all sexual limits. It didn't work out at all. And then we make a big jump. Well, there was Marquis de Sade. At that time, he was locked up in the Bastille, and he wrote the first absolutely perverse material, which had never been written like this or published like this. And so there are input from these really sick minds who lived a completely perverse and chaotic sexual life, and their intelligent minds formed this into an ideology and said this is the right thing to do. They invented reasons why this is the right thing to do, all on different terms. And we make a big jump to Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud he did made new discoveries about the human being, that the subconscious, and the subconscious has an influence on the way we live our life. But what he said is the suppression of the sexual drive is the main thing for the human person, which determines what kind of a person he is. So sex is the number one defining element of identity of the human person. That was new. Nobody said that before. That our identity is mainly defined by our sexuality. Then a highly destructive man, Wilhelm Reich. He was a pupil he was a collaborator, in fact, of Sigmund Freud. Very soon began to do therapy and psychoanalysis with people. It's doubtful how qualified he was for that, and split away from Freud. And he was a communist. Actually, all these promoters of the sexual revolution are anarchists, are communists, or at least sometimes members of the Communist Party for a certain time, and lived a complete chaotic sexual life. And very often homosexuals or lesbians or partners, and after partners, or many partners at the same time. If you look at their lives, it's chaotic, and it usually does not end well. Nor did Wilhelm Reich's life end well. It's strange, he was against marriage, and he married 3 times. Why did he marry again and again? He wrote a book, The Sexual Revolution. That's the title. And he was a communist. He wanted to bring down the bourgeois society and create a classless society. And had the idea, coming from Freud and sex and that tradition, if you sexualize people, if you sexualize young people, if you sexualize the youth, you will bring down the family, you will bring down marriage, and you will create chaos in the whole of society. He was right. Exactly that happened. And he started his movement before the Second World War. He had to emigrate because he was a Jew. And he started his sex-pol movement, as he called it. He went around giving talks and workshops and whatever he could gain in publicity to give the message, live out your sexuality however you like. Teach your children to masturbate early. As children, they also have a right for sexual satisfaction. These ideas he planted into the heads of people. Then the Nazis came. He had to leave Germany. He invented an orgon, he called orgon machine, harnessing sexual energy from wheat fields, or something absolutely queer. When he came to the United States, they put him in a madhouse, and he died there. Yeah, so it wasn't really a very not the kind of end of life which we would aim for. That was Wilhelm Reich, but his ideas were very destructive. And when I studied at the Free University in West Berlin, when the '68 movement began, and people were putting out his literature, and by then they were still prohibited. And it was Raubdruck. You just printed it without any license. Yeah. And I remember these books being offered. And then very soon, big publishers published Wilhelm Reich. And that was poison into the heads of my generation. There's one other author, well, there are many more to name. Herbert Marcuse was very influential. He wrote a book called Errors and Civilization. And he said, if you live out your sexual drive, if you go away from the achievement principle, the idea was you had to work and achieve something in life. No, don't, Leistungsprinzip in German, don't live by the achievement principle, live by the Lust principle, Lustprinzip. And then we will have paradise. If we do that, we will have paradise, and we will have a society without domination, without power structures. After the Nazis, which were not so long ago, that was very tempting. And this deteriorated so in the hippie movement, and they had the slogan, make love, not war. Wouldn't be that a good recipe? Make love, have as much sexual intercourse as you like, and you will not have war. Well, we have wars, lots of wars, and lots of domination, and it did not work out.
Well, maybe we can shift a little bit to, or because you mentioned a lot of people there like Wilhelm Reich and Sigmund Freud and so on, and in your book you also mentioned Jean-Jacques Rousseau again with the French Revolution and Margaret Sanger, and you said in the talk yesterday you said that what they all had in common was that they hated the Catholic Church.
Oh yes.
And maybe you could talk about that. Why did they hate the Catholic Church so much? And why were that the object of their hate, or why were they all enemies of the Church?
Yes. Before I answer, I want to mention one other French thinker, deconstructionist. They wanted to deconstruct the ideas and the structures of society, Jacques Foucault. Mm-hmm. And the students now all read him. Last year it came out in the mainstream press in France that he had very strange sexual appetites, namely raping young men on tombstones in Algiers. You know, stuff like this. Yeah. And one thing which I'm astounded about, you are somehow in the academic field, you are not allowed to look at the life of people and connect it to their ideas. What are their ideas and how do they live? And if somebody does that, I would say throw out every word this man has written, if this is the life, because we don't want to live like this. And because it's criminal what he did, and he did a lot of damage with the way he lived in his personal life and the ideas which now students have to study. Why do we study works of people like this? So your question about the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has held up a certain anthropology, and from that anthropology, actually, it's before it's anthropology, it's faith in God. And from the faith in God, a certain definite anthropology results, and from there morality results. How do we have to live to be in accordance with the will of God? That is what the church proclaims. And we have the Bible, we have the self-revelation of God. It starts with Genesis. God created man in his own image and likeness. How incredible. How incredible. And he created them as men and women. And the first commandment from God is to procreate. So this is set on the first page of the Bible. And then the second creation story is Adam and Eve. He created first Adam, the man, and out of Adam, the woman, and they became one flesh. So we have this in the very first pages of the Bible, sort of the ground tone, the ground note of human existence. It went all through the up and down structure, tales and narratives of the Old Testament, and then Jesus Christ. God incarnates in the body on this very earth. And this is what the church has to proclaim and did proclaim for the last 2,000 years. The Christians were completely visible as having a completely different life than the heathens around them. They did not kill their babies. They had no abortions. They had sex only in marriage, which was unheard of. They were against homosexuality. So this is how they distinguished themselves from the heathen environment in which they lived. And it comes from what Jesus said, what Jesus lived, how Jesus, the vision of what the human being is through the very words of Jesus in the Sermon of the Mount, and so on and so on. And the church managed, the Catholic Church mostly, managed to keep that message alive for 2,000 years, which is a huge, huge human achievement, because we change, everything changes in our hands. We change, whatever we touch changes, our commitments are hard to keep, we like to break our commitments, and so on, yeah? So this is the incredible human achievement through the grace of God, the apostolic tradition, to keep that message alive. This is what God wants you to love and to procreate. He wants you for that to be one, to realize the longing of your heart in sexuality. And what these thinkers proclaimed, the Catholic Church was totally on the other side. So here was this bulwark. And here they say no, and Lustprinzip, and just go along with your sexual drive. And here's the church saying no, marriage and family, and a very high ideal of the human, an ideal of what the human being can be, and that it can actually become like that, like Jesus Christ. Take your measurement from Jesus Christ. And this, of course, they hated. Yeah, and the church was powerful. The church in every village, a priest in every village, the whole European culture. If you travel in Europe, how magnificent. How magnificent. In every culture, Christianity developed in a different way, in a different architecture style, and so on. And these thinkers had to fight against this message, because of course it was against their own conscience, and they did not want to be touched in their conscience.
Yeah, very good point. I mean, now unfortunately we see, especially in Germany with this another way now, that you said that the being against the sexual revolution was sort of one of the distinguishing factors that Christians had, and now it seems like a lot of Catholics, even bishops, want to go along with the world and with the sexual revolution. how is like what should the church do, or what should the bishops do? How is it a misunderstanding? It seems to be, if you want to interpret it nicely, that it's a misunderstanding of you try to love someone and be tolerant, but you're actually tolerating and proclaiming evil things in the process. How should the church behave and get back to these roots and opposing the sexual revolution again?
It is really a big tragedy what is happening, especially in the German church, in the church in Germany. Yeah. There may be a German church soon. So far, it is only the Catholic Church in Germany, which should be in alliance with Rome, with the magisterium, with the Pope. The church is not a bulwark. In reality, it lives in the society, and all these influences found their way into the church in the last 50 years. And in the 70s, the priest seminaries were undermined by homosexuals. There's this book, Goodbye, Good Men. It shows how they were intentionally undermined by homosexual lobbyists who went into the priest seminaries. So the sexual revolution could not be kept out from the church. But there was still struggle. And then there was I converted to Catholic faith in 1997. That's quite a long time now. It's 26 years. And I have hardly ever heard a priest preach about sexuality, about marriage, true catechesis, what marriage is about, how sexuality fits into that love, marriage, family, man and woman. You hardly ever did I hear any homilies on these subjects. Now, the situation has changed dramatically. But we have to start a little bit further. In 2010, Pope Benedict proclaimed the year of the priest and of the priesthood. And as an example for priesthood, he put the Abbey of Ars, Pfarrer of Ars, yeah, he erected that. And in the very same year, the sexual crisis, the abuse crisis in the church broke loose, which is absolutely terrible. The effect of the sins of these priests who did these crimes are huge. The abuse in the church is much less than in the general society, but the effect of a priest doing that is much bigger than of anybody else. They destroy not only the person, they also destroy their faith, and they destroy the whole attitude of the society in the church. If that happens in the church, what do I want to have to do with that church? Covering it all up. And so that broke loose in 2010. And of course, the media jumped on it and kept it alive and alive and alive, because in the same spirit of all these thinkers. Now we can destroy the church. They didn't have to go to the Crusades. They didn't have to go through the burning of witches anymore to bring down the church. They had to go through, they could use the abuse crisis, which was in the papers all the time. Yeah. The bishops are in the fire, of course. They are meant to keep the faith alive. That's their job. That's their vocation. That is what when they were consecrated as bishops, that is what they promised. But they are under fire. And many caved in. And what is now happening with the synodal path, so-called synodal path in Germany, is that they abused the abuse crisis. 80% of the abuse within the church by priests is homosexual. It's abuse of young men around puberty. 80%. So they went on a path of trying to reformulate and say homosexuality is okay. And to somehow get this out of the way. If homosexual is no problem, well, then the abuse is not so bad. Mm-hmm. And so they are now have reformulated. One thing is the authority of the bishops. Rome said no, just recently, a strict no. You cannot change the authority of the bishop and share it with lay people, which the Germans wanted to do. But Rome has not said anything about destroying the moral teaching of the church. And I have leaflets. I'm in the Diocese of Cardinal Marx. There are leaflets of LGBT. They are just written by the LGBT movement, and they're in the church now. Mm-hmm. And the church says we will cooperate with anti-discrimination organizations of the state. Mm-hmm. And they changed the work law, Arbeitsrecht, within the church, that anybody can now work within the church. A transgender person can work in a kindergarten, and a homosexual can work as an assistant of the bishop, and so on. So the really tragic and alarming situation is that 2/3 of the German bishop agreed on that. Yeah. So we are really out in the sea, in a stormy sea. I am personally I'm very sad about it, but I think nothing can stop us to walk the path with Jesus Christ, especially in times of the internet. We have many, many, many good sources for our faith, and we have the Bible, we have the Word of God, we have people around us, and we should form communities where we support each other. So I don't think this crisis, which is maybe the largest crisis the church ever went through, cannot stop us from walking the path of a disciple of Jesus Christ. And we have this, I don't know in which book it is, it may be Ezekiel, I will come and care for my sheep, God says at some point. So I don't think we, as individuals, as persons, we can still walk the path. And I believe there is a plan of God in all this. The prophecies of Jesus himself in Matthew 24, they're very, very severe. And he says, I tell you now, because when it happens, then you know I've told you. And we are moving into that. But I don't think we should lose heart. There is a plan of God in all of this. And we go through God Friday, but the resurrection came very soon. And we have to fix our glance on the resurrection which is ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Gabriele Kuby, for sitting down with me and doing this interview. I think I can recommend everyone to read your book, The Global Sexual Revolution, and also your other books. I know not all of them are available in English, but many of them are. I want to mention the other one, which
has been published just last year by Augustine's Press. It's called The Abandoned Generation. The Global Sexual Revolution is a book about the predators. Who are those who actually put that into action, who put it into the society, in the schools, in the kindergarten, in the universities, everywhere? Who were the people who did that, and how did they do it? That's the issue of the global sexual revolution. The victims of this revolution is the young generation. We are all victims, but the children, they are helpless in this. And so I saw the figures in the statistics of 30% of the children in certain areas in Berlin and other areas of Germany are in therapeutic treatment. And the insurance organizations say it's a change from acute illness to chronic morbidity. So we are really making the next generation sick. And the Corona lockdown and all the measures which were taken aggravated that intensely. So we have now statistics of 65% of the young generation being depressed. The suicide attempts going up like this. The psychiatric hospitals are overflowing and cannot meet the demand of young people who have huge psychological disorders. So that alarmed me. And I have 3 children, grown-up children, and I have 5 beautiful grandchildren. And to think in what kind of a society they are coming, and how the state puts their hands on these children, really called me to speak out. And so I wrote this book, and in 13 chapters I say, what are we doing to children to make them sick? And of course I only write this to motivate parents to care for their children, to receive them with joy as a gift from heaven, to bring them up with their love, to keep their love, to guide them with their love through into adulthood, which is not easy. It is a high demand on adults, but it must be our primary aim to guide our children through this life with love. And only if they experience true love in their home by their parents will the parents remain to be the people to whom they first look and get advice from and guidance. So it is a very high demand on parents to keep the soul connection to their children, to guide them through these times, which make it very hard, very hard for the next generation to develop into healthy adults that can carry the society, that can fight for freedom. Yeah. And I'm inspired by what I experienced in this conference, which was about abortion, and the Bonifacius Institute. Young people, young men, young women who have understood what is going on in our time and say, we will make a difference. And there are many young people who understand that, even if they're wounded by what they have experienced, but they come out of it and say, no, we will make a difference. And that is a joy to see, and that gives me hope in this world. My true hope is in Jesus Christ, and that hope cannot be destroyed and disappointed.
Well, thank you so much, Mrs. Kuby, and thank you for your words and for explaining everything so clearly. I think that was really helpful to many people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.